You're listening to This Naked Mind with Annie Grace.
Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to This Naked Mind podcast. And I'm here with Allie. How are you, Allie?
I'm great. Thanks, Annie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you. So why don't you sort of take us back to the beginning in your relationship with alcohol? Where did it all start for you?
Well, it was a long time. Started in my teens. I was brought up in the 80s. So sort of, probably 13, 14, fitting in with the kids at school. The main thing I guess I started first with smoking cigarettes, because alcohol, I mean, when you're at school, you can't really, just nip out and drink some beers. So it started with smoking, which was just terrible because I had childhood asthma really badly. So, there's that fitting in. So after that, my dad owned a tavern, which would think, oh yeah, awesome. I sort of learned how to roll cigarettes and experiment with alcohol, pretty, vomiting and stuff go hand in hand with drinking and trying to smoke at a young age, but continued at, like some people would give it away because it tasted horrible, or it gives you head spins, or it makes you feel sick. But no, good old Ali just pushed through that, continued down the cigarette. And then I moved to a little town quite a fair way away from home. I was 16 when I left home. And that's kind of like the alcohol for me then was like a massive friend and crutch to have the confidence to just to live, really. I was really shy and anxious and didn't have much self-esteem or self-worth. So alcohol was, I held on to that beer for dear life, to talk to anybody. And in those days, in Australia, you start drinking, the legal age is 18. So I didn't look 18. I looked about 15, but, in a small town, they were just like, hey, love, what do you want to drink? And it was like, oh, I'll have a beer, thanks. So, I sort of stayed up in a small town and really didn't fit in anywhere. So I ended up coming back down to Perth and then living with a girlfriend from school. And again, I think we would have been about 17, and same sort of thing. We'd go to nightclubs it just wasn't even a question of showing ID. And again, I didn't look my age. I had an older brother, so he was sort of my route to getting into nightclubs or casino. And he actually used to get asked for ID, and I'd just slip through. He'd be like standing there thinking, oh my God, she's like 16, But so alcohol was just pretty much what I just relied on, and it was normalised. Everyone I knew drank. So there wasn't many. My parents didn't really drink a lot until sort of after they had a marriage breakdown when I was 12. And I just remember Mum, sitting on the phone with her girlfriends, drinking beer and chain smoking cigarettes. And my dad used to always sit out the back after work with his beer, read the paper, roll his cigarettes. And we wouldn't, he wouldn't come in for dinner. It would just be like he'd be left to, his own devices. So quite an avoidant, distance dad. And Mum I'm the youngest of 7. I've got a twin brother, and, there wasn't much room for, hey, Mum, I'm feeling this way. And, she was just running on empty most of her life. But, so after I left, I lived with a girlfriend, and we had a party, and it was out of control. And I sort of rang my mum and I said, Mum, can I move back home? And she said, no, I told you when you left that, you're not to come home. So my brother ended up taking me in, and I think I was only would have been about 18. And that was, we just had like housemates, everybody drank, smoked pot. It was fun, not going to lie. But it was quickly, I think I was about 18 when I said to one of my sisters that I think I'm an alcoholic. And I mean, that's the legal age of drinking. And I was already having the issues with alcohol at such a young age. And she was, through no fault of her own, just stop, just don't have any, just don't drink. And it was just like, okay. Couldn't do that because of peer pressure and living in a house, partying and stuff. And then I met a guy, sort of my first long-term boyfriend, and he, partied. We saw bands. I experimented with recreational drugs for all of our relationship, and realised that I was I had no self-esteem. So the alcohol was, again, just that crutch that I used to be able to socialise. And then I sort of got jealous with him because I had never been in a relationship. And of course, my childhood abandonment issues were pretty much in our relationship the whole time. Like the jealousy, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But I just didn't know how to cope. So I just drink my way through the feelings of, oh my God, he's looking at that girl. Oh my God, he's talking to that girl. Like, it was just this constant nightmare of this jealousy. So eventually he had enough of me, accusing him of playing away. So when that relationship broke down, I was only in my mid-20s, and that was a pretty dark time. Like, I drank myself into absolute oblivion, and I was lucky I didn't die, to be honest. I just drank and drank and drank to try and soothe that, abandoned little child. And, of course, having a breakup's not the most fun thing to have. So I then sort of moved on with that to then thinking, well, I basically turned into a bit of a promiscuous ladette. I went into I was working sort of as a landscaper, working with men, and I could drink them all under the table. That was my credit. Like, my labels of myself was party girl, alcoholic alley, which was AA, which we all used to laugh about. So, I used to have this saying, find them, fuck them, forget them. And that was my protection. And, I'd put myself at risk, every weekend pretty much. I'd go to a nightclub trying to get free booze, sleeping around, just lost, absolutely lost. I did go into therapy a few times, and it was always coming back to self and this abandonment that I felt as a kid, being the youngest. You're not really seen, heard, acknowledged. And I guess I used alcohol to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. That's all I knew. That's the only tools I had in my toolbox. And also, I guess, the credit, drinking men under the table, playing pool. I'm a total, utter tomboy. And I had really close relationships with my brothers, so I could sort of get into that male mindset. And I figured, what worked. And the playing pool and partying and driving trucks. And I worked in the mining industry for a couple of years, and that was literally a license to drink and travel. So they ended up bringing in a drug and alcohol screening, because this would have been like the mid-90s. And, the Wild West, I live in Western Australia, and it's pretty much holds up the economy through mining industry for Australia. And when they decided that, the miners were getting a little bit bit naughty, they decided to think, well, we better screen them. So once that came in, when I heard that they were going to test for alcohol and drugs, I was like, well, I'm out. How dare they take, my alcohol and marijuana was pretty much what I was using away. So I left the industry, and it was very well paid. All in between that, I'd lost my license 3 times. The last time was in 1998, working on a mine site. And that was all these, I didn't think that, alcohol's the problem here. I just thought, again, there was that credit, you lost your license, and like the geologist, I lied to him. Oh, mate, you have to pick me up from to go to work now. Like, he had no clue. The lying, I was a really good liar. So that was 1998. I promised and prayed and said to myself, I'll never drink again. Please, universe. I really thought that I'd be put in jail because it was DUI, high range. I mean, I've been drinking all day. I was on my way back from the nightclub, stubby between my legs, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And for some reason, like I did all the right steps to get my license back, which was not drinking, and then as soon as I got my license back, it was like it never happened. Straight back into, okay. Dodged the system, I got my license back, and, just never had that association with, alcohol's the problem and there's one solution, not drink. So then I met, just sort of had pretty meaningless jobs. And then I was working for my brother landscaping, and we found a stray dog, and we were working on a site, and this dog just, we were there for a few weeks, and I'm like saying to my brother, let's take the dog home. And he's like, nah. And then we thought, well, who do we ring to, get rid of this dog? So call a ranger. And I chatted to the ranger, and I said, how do you become a ranger? Because I have a real gift with animals and dogs especially. So he told me that you had to go, it wasn't like university, so that was a good thing in my mind, because I had this limiting belief that I wasn't smart, I wasn't good enough. So when I found out how to do it, I actually did the course. And I remember the night before my big exam, I got drunk in that, oh my God, did all the right steps. And then right at the last night before the test, it was like, oh my gosh. So I woke up, I passed the test, thankfully. And then, got my first job in local government working as a ranger. And that really, I was like, oh, wow, I really love this job. In fact, on my sort of first job, I went to a girlfriend's house, and we drank half a carton of beer. That's just a normal Thursday night. Woke up in the morning, hadn't eaten, and I was driving to work when I got pulled over because I didn't indicate, and the police pulled me over, and I'm like, oh shit, and I'm like heavily breathing. I mean, I've done this before. So like heavily breathing, morning, and they're like, oh, morning, love, just you didn't indicate back there, and have you, we'll just do a random random alcohol. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And I actually blew numbers in the morning. So that was a pretty quiet trip back to the police station, and I texted my boss saying, I'm just going to be a bit late. I've been pulled over. And then by the time I got back to the police station, I'd blew under. And then they drove me back, and I went to work. And my boss, actually, to be honest, he was actually a bit of a pisshead. So we had like, the bacon and eggs, the coffee, was no consequence. So that sort of, I've just been dodging those experiences all of my life until I stopped drinking. But then I met my husband sort of while I was working, and he is a massive drinker, and I thought, beautiful, I've met my match. A few red flags there, but I thought, oh no, I can change him. I am 9 years older than him. I was kind of like in my early 30s, and thought, he'll do, he'll do. So we had a honeymoon baby who's just left now for work. She's 18. And, it was like my first bout of sobriety was being pregnant. That's literally the longest ever that I hadn't drank for my whole life. And felt amazing, as we do, and we've got a bun in the oven. And then as soon as I had her, within, I don't know, weeks, I was back onto drinking. I mean, I think even the nurse at the hospital was saying it's okay to drink Guinness. There's the iron in there, and people would come with the baby, like you'd come into the hospital, because I actually had a cesarean, and there's bottles of champagne, like the men go off and wet the baby's head. I mean, what an excuse. It's just an excuse to get drunk. And I'm sitting in a hospital with, stitches in my guts and, going, oh, what about me? So, I'll have a Guinness. And, I mean, just nobody batted an eyelid. It was just that culture of, oh, yes, has red wine's good for your heart, Guinness is good for your iron. So I was hooked, line and sinker. That was my pattern. So, as soon as I could, I started straight back into drinking with a small child. Thankfully, she was a good sleeper. Otherwise, I don't think we would have coped. So, it literally was just like back to normal. Drinking every night, not getting drunk because I was breastfeeding, but the times that you drop your kid off to your mum to babysit, like we just couldn't get to the bottle shop or to our friend's house to get absolutely annihilated because, oh my God, I'm a new mum and this is my reward. And it was like, Ali's back. I wasn't older. I was 35 when I had mine. And I sort of thought it was a bit dry, being a stay-at-home mum. So we actually bought a property in a remote place, like literally no one around, on a farm. And that was a good thing and a bad thing. I felt like I was on holidays. We had my first horse, we had motorbikes, I could drink any time of the day and I didn't have to drive anywhere. So it was real dangerous because I did actually suffer postnatal depression, even though I lied to the clinic nurse at 6 weeks to do the test and I bullshitted. And she's like, no, I think you're a classic case of postnatal. And so eventually I did get onto some antidepressants. Still didn't think it was alcohol, although through the years this inner voice was like, don't drink tonight. Like I'd look at diaries and it was always like, what would be a wish? Well, it wouldn't be. I guess the first thing I would wish is that I could moderate, like I just get the can't stops. And it was managing that, like it was just that headspace of, if people would, like my in-laws, they had the wine, they're European, so they would have wine with dinner and then the dessert wine. I couldn't give a shit what wine it was. I was just like, give me the wine because it's alcohol. So I never had that sort of off switch. And so living on a farm with a new baby, my alcohol and marijuana use was like on free for all. So then, I think my husband at the time, I think he had postnatal depression for men. Like he just was not coping at all. I mean, we only ended up having one child and I did have 3 miscarriages while we were on the farm. And the last one was, I was like 17 weeks, had to be hospitalised. I kind of was in the hospital thinking, oh shit, is it because I drank through my early stages? Like just that shame and guilt. And then wasn't talked about, came back after hospital, obviously had a couple of days off because I was feeling pretty rough. And then that's how we coped in our marriage. We just drank it away, didn't talk about it, pushed it under the rug. It didn't happen, not even my family. They were like, oh, well, it's kind of like people just think miscarriages is a missed period. So again, nothing was dealt with. Both him and I were really, really miserable. We kind of broke up a few times, like without moving out, but we just were so unhappy, but kept pushing through. We're married, we've got to make it work. Had all the self-help books. I said to my mum, like I'm drinking a lot, but I didn't tell her that I was also smoking marijuana, and that's because it's illegal, and it's but the main thing, I guess, was the alcohol. But she said, oh well, darling, just try not to drink or go to the doctor. Like, it's just so, like, yeah, you just feel that shame of, well, nobody actually knew, like, that alcohol is bad for you, because there's still that messaging that was still on the news, like red wine's good for your heart. A glass a day. So, this false thing of, oh, yeah, well, I'm just doing what the doctor says. But realistically, I just couldn't have one or two glasses. I was like, give me the bottle. So we ended up moving to France to live, because, as I said, his parents are European, and I thought, fresh start. If I'm going to be isolated, I might as well move to the other side of the world. So that was beautiful. I mean, I wished I still lived there, but we come to France, and it's like, people, the French have their little shots of, I can't think of the word, the drink in the morning, with their coffee. I mean, it's the best place if you're an alcoholic. You go live in France, because they'd have their long lunches and there'd be wine on the table. Like people at work, you literally got given cider or wine as part of your meal. And it's just like, oh, wicked. And it was a lot cheaper to drink over there. So, yeah, that, lots of days of walking my daughter to, pre-primary or kindergarten, I guess, over there. So hungover, like looking like shit. But the night before, I was in the bar like, oh, yeah, I'm from Australia. And then the next day, you'd see those people, and I'd be like, oh, morning, bonjour. Like, just couldn't wait to get the hell out of there, go home and basically do nothing for the rest of the day, go back and pick her up. And it was just that cycle. That was my life. Hungover, pissed, hungover, drunk. So then we moved back to, we lived in England, but that sort of all went pear-shaped. We were living with a guy that was pretty much an alcoholic, and then that blew up. So we found ourselves back in Australia, and again, living in a remote town, and again, I'm drinking. For some reason, I switched to Bacardi. Trying to cope, living in a new town, making new friends. It was very cliquey. And I'd just literally go home and drink. And my husband was working like in the mines. So the boys would come over, and I was just like, invite such and such over, because they were a big drinker. So there's just that pattern of, just trying to find people that drank as much as us. And it wasn't hard. Like, we had our house was the place to be, and then moved back to Perth, which is the city, and we set up our own moonshine still as a hobby. So, like, our marriage was pretty toxic. It was, I tried to leave, then I had a bout of sobriety in maybe 2015. It lasted until summertime, and then it was like, oh, well, everybody else is drinking. And that was the thing, I'd say to people, oh, let's do dry July, or let's do, sober October. And I'd just get the absolute piss taken out of me, like, what do you want to do that for? So of course the people pleaser in me, oh, okay. I'd last probably 3 days, and then I'd be like, oh, stuff it, I'd go again, like using other people to control myself. And that's sort of how I lived, was like, if they didn't want to give drinking away or stop for the day or, for the month, then I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not going to do either. Even though I really deep down inside wanted to not drink, I just didn't have the inner strength to speak up and say, actually, no, I'm going to do it for myself. So we eventually, that moonshine, the still, the husband with his alcohol issues, very passive aggressive. He was basically passing out on the couch every night. I was anxiety ridden, trying to work out what state he was in. Always sort of putting it on him, like, I wish he would stop drinking. I wish he would stop drinking. And then when I had enough and like make him stop drinking, then I would literally just keep drinking. No support for him, like, oh, it's your fault. It's you've got the drinking problem. But actually, I actually did as well. But my drinking, in my mind, it wasn't affecting my life. Like, I was still cooking dinner, I was still going to work, I was still, meeting my requirements. So that's the lie, and the denial that it was, it's all about somebody else, not me. And then in 2019, it just got to a point where it was just like, no, I'm done, I'm out. And his mental health had really declined, and we both finally had an honest conversation and said, are we just prolonging the inevitable? So we had a mutual separation, but then it quickly turned into a pretty terrible time. His alcohol use went from just still an alcoholic, but then he just ramped up, and everybody kind of said, oh, poor him, the marriage is broken down. And there's me trying to work. I had a pretty stressful job. I was managing an animal shelter, dealing with, stray abandoned animals, euthanizing animals, dealing with a toxic ex, like a horrible boss. Like, if anybody had the right to freaking get drunk, it was me. But I don't know, you sort of find out who your friends are when you and they all sort of thought, well, even his parents were, oh, well, it's because of the marriage breakdown that he's getting paralytic. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I just had to back myself. But then that marriage breakdown, I just thought, okay, well, this is party girl alley. I'm back to woohoo, I'm free. So I gave alcohol a real red hot go. I was back out in the bars. I was back at the nightclubs. I was back with, basically drinking. And then I was sort of finding myself drinking alone more, because when I smoked marijuana, I wouldn't drive. So a lot of people still drive and whatever, but I wouldn't. And then that would stop me from going out. I wouldn't walk the dogs. Like, it just became very lonely and isolating. And just that victim mentality. The few friends that I had would just sit around every whatever night, and, it was boring. We're just talking about the same crap and bitching about people, and that's not me. So then then COVID came. Awesome. That was great. Yeah, I could drink any time of the day. No, I still had to work. I had that job where we were sort of emergency things, so I didn't sit in an office and could work from home. But yeah, certainly when COVID came, the little part of me was just like, awesome. Like, let's stock up and drink at home. That suited me perfectly. And then I sort of got sick of tired, like just wake up. I mean, I'm a bit older now, and the hangovers were not enjoyable, like just that constant dull headache. Everything was in black and white. I was angry. I was always had headaches. My diet was crap. I looked like shit. So then I sort of started to get a bit curious, and I never Googled, am I an alcoholic? Or maybe I did when I was in my 20s, but I knew that I drank differently to anybody else I knew, and I was lying to everyone, but mostly to myself. And so I heard a lady on the radio when I was driving home, and she was talking about sobriety, so that was 2000 maybe 21 early. And that's sort of like there's that, is there another avenue that we can go down? And so I listened to her and heard her, Googled her name's Danny Carr, and so I found her podcast. And then while I was Googling, I found your book, bought the book, and read that, and I was like, oh, wow. Like, so that sort of complemented. So I reached out to How I Quit Alcohol by Danny Carr, and she had, so actually I hadn't reached out to her. I was just getting curious. Was reading your book and actually abstained, like I didn't drink for most of May 2021 or maybe April. And then I would get back into that loop, like I'd have a good little stint, and then bam, just one Tuesday afternoon, I'd find myself driving home. It was like into the bottle shop, grab your beer or grab my alcohol, go home, smoke a cone, drink, and then be like, what am I doing? And then that internal thing, oh, you're useless. Why'd you do it for? Like just that loop. And so I rang a girlfriend and said, like, I need help. How do I get away from this? So my good friend from high school, I didn't realise that she was doing really deep hypnotherapy. She's also a licensed counsellor. So I ended up ringing her, and she said, come and see me. So I went down, spent a day sort of basically in therapy, even though I'd had therapy over the years, but really broke it down. Like, why do what does alcohol-free look like to you? Just unpacked a lot of stuff, and then she hypnotised me, and we asked the specific questions to your subconscious, which, for example, how would Ali navigate, what will stop Ali from picking up a drink again? And then my subconscious will be like, well, she just doesn't go to the bar. She doesn't put herself at risk. She doesn't hang around those toxic friends. So we really I was under for nearly 2 hours and woke up out of that, didn't drink, but I did have a work colleague's wedding. And I don't know, whether she said something that you'll drink then, but anyway, I found myself not drinking for maybe 3 weeks, not even thinking about it. And then bam, the wedding came. There's me with a bloody glass of bubbles. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And I was even kind of shaking because something in me was just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But of course, the old pattern was like, I just have this one night. So there I am, last one up, partying out like there's no tomorrow. And then the next morning, it was out of town, so I had to drive home. And that feeling, Annie, of that, am I going to get pulled over? Oh, you're stupid. What did you do that for? From that high of, I'm having a great time, to then that low of the anxiety, I guess. And so I drove home and I actually took a video of myself and just said, you'll never, ever, ever feel like this again. And really had a good chat to myself, because that feeling I've carried around with me for nearly 40 years of, so I haven't drank since, and that was the 21st of June 2021.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. What a great story. Wow. So powerful. I relate to so much of it. I feel like, all of those little aspects of, I don't know, being just indoctrinated into the whole thing. It's just so true. So how has it been for you?
Amazing. So I did sit in, obviously nearly 40 years of drinking. When you take alcohol away, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. That's that's when I heard Danny Carr on the radio. So I was starting to, search and work out, okay, well, I didn't really fit into the AA thing. I think I had that mental thing in my head that I think a lot of people had. AA is only for old, men that sleep under the bridge. It just didn't fit. I just wasn't in alignment with that. So I then I think I had about 7 months under my belt, and I didn't tell anyone. It was June, so in Australia it was winter. I basically turned into a hermit and avoided everyone and everything, but just kept my own. I told a couple of friends at work that weren't drinkers, so I got into hiking. I've always been active, but I just surrounded myself with, people that didn't need alcohol to have a good time, and just switch things around, like any triggers. So I would do the gardening or doing different things in the morning. So then you didn't have that sense of reward. Oh, I've put the bins out. I've done some gardening. I better have a drink to reward myself. So, but yeah, I just kept, read some Quit Lit, listened to podcasts, and then I joined up to a 3-month challenge. And that's part of doing the work. And it was literally unpacking the whys on why we drink. What are you escaping from? What are you soothing? It's a bit like what you're in your book, it's that. And also because, that's all I knew. That's literally all we were taught. I mean, it was alcohol's for celebrating, commiserating, rewarding. I didn't, literally we used to say, don't ever trust somebody who doesn't drink. They're weird. Don't trust that person. They don't drink. So you wouldn't go near them because you think, oh, but I guess deep down it reflects on you, right? So yeah, I did the challenge and, journaling. So over the years of active drinking, whenever I'd go, I'd get Reiki, I'd get I'd go see psychics, and they'd be like, oh, just take this out of my head, And then it was, this self-soothing, it's that abandoned child that was never seen or heard. So obviously when you take alcohol, which I did, it was the whys on why we drink, and I'm worthy. So Danny taught us how to meditate, and always people would say, oh, meditate and you should do this. And I was like, no, I'm too monkey brain. I can't do it. Why would I want to do that? Anyway, she taught us that and breath work. And it was like, wow, journaling, getting it all out of your head. So that, calming that nervous system. I was just in fight or flight mode for my whole life of reacting as a 15-year-old girl. So, and not trusting myself. So yeah, I learned that, and that was basically, a year into sobriety. I was going to, my twin brother lives away from home, and I literally gave it a millisecond thought of when I go up to see him for our birthday. Yeah, maybe, I've given alcohol away for a year. Maybe I'll just get absolutely, get pissed with my brother, have a good time, and then I'll just get back on the wagon. And honestly, Annie, I just gave it a split-second thought and went, why would I do that? Why? Because it took me so long to get to that point, and my life leading up to that was so good to wake up feeling amazing. So what would that play? And that's what Danny and what I tell people now, play it forward. So what would that look like? Because a drink at lunchtime, I know for me, that would end up, till midnight. So play it forward. What's it going to achieve? I wake up, probably wouldn't remember half the conversations, wake up feeling like shit. And then that same depressive critic in your head would be like, oh, you're useless, you can't do it. I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. So I then decided, well, it's not even like I'll never drink again. I just know I never, because I've had the evidence of 2.5 years sober, how my life's changed by taking that toxic liquid out of my life. And I just wouldn't go back to that ever. It's just not worth it. And the only time that I probably would have which was that day, that time, you know, it would have been for somebody else. That people pleaser in me, I would drink because it would make him happy because he drinks. And I just think, nah, I'm staying in my lane. I know that I'm worth it, and it's just not worth it. Like, it's just not worth it. So yeah, that's what sobriety looks like. I've, you know, moved to a new town. I've like, it's been really important for my daughter. So, you know, like when I was after the marriage breakdown, she was 13. I had no clue. She was out drinking, and in fact, she actually nicked quite a lot of when I turned 50, everybody gave me alcohol. I mean, that's just the sort of person that I was. And like, I had a shit ton of alcohol. And yeah, my daughter was nicking it, and I sort of would question her, but she would come up with this excuse, oh, no, Mum, you know. And anyway, so you can't give it away for anybody else but yourself. But I tell you, since, you know, I said to her, like, I'm not going to drink for a year, sort of not really believing it at the time. And she said, well, bullshit, you couldn't give up for a month. And that's the thing, like, when you first take alcohol out, and, you know, I had lots of friends that were drinkers. I actually, the easiest thing to say would be, I'm doing a 1 year no beer challenge, and that just would stop everybody. And it's just so crazy how we have to give a reason on why we don't drink. You've got to follow it up with, oh yes, because I'm pregnant, or I'm driving, or I'm doing a challenge. And it's just like, now I just go, I don't drink.
It's great.
Like, I don't have to explain myself. You know, that took over a year, but that's a good sort of little thing to stop that. Just have one, or, oh, you know, you're weird. It's like, no, I'm doing a challenge. So yeah. And then once that now I just don't have to say anything. It's just like, I don't drink, full stop. I don't have to explain myself. But yeah, what I was saying, like, my daughter now, like, she's, you know, I'm really proud that she's got a role model, because so she's 18. So this year she turned 18 in April. That was a little bit like, I always imagined myself getting drunk with my daughter on her 18th, because that's the sort of minds, you know, we couldn't wait for her to get her license. And the ironic thing was, when she got her license, I was sober. So, you know, we always used to sit around going, oh, I wish these kids could drive us to the pub, or drive her to netball, or, you know, and kind of like, it's very ironic that the time that she got her license, I didn't need her to drive me around and parent me or pick me up from parties. And yeah, it's been a filter down to her too. She's realised that, you know, she was not like me at all. She's got really good self-worth, self-esteem, and doesn't need to go out every other night to get drunk. So I don't know if that's probably because she had two parents that were real big drinkers, and she just sort of thinks, oh, I don't want to go down that path or whatever. But now she's up here living with me. I've moved out of a big city, and I'm in a town where everybody drinks. I am the freak. I am that one. Don't trust the person that doesn't drink. But I think I don't, you know, go out and say, oh, I'm not a drinker. I just do it by my actions. And people are really, like, quietly inspired by, far out. Like, I went to a Christmas party on Friday night, had a great time, didn't drink, watched everyone make idiots of themselves, drove myself home. Very happy and content at 10 o'clock. And I was like, wake up in the morning, because I've been working, and wake up in the morning. It's just like, yep, that's the gift. That's the gift, right? It's just.
So let me ask you the question that we, at the end of this, is basically, if you were going to go back in time, Allie, and tell your past self about what life is like for you now, what would you say to her?
Oh, it's amazing. It's freeing. It's authentic. There's no more lying. I can drive anywhere, anytime. I can live by my own rules. I'm not living by, my clock isn't revolving around alcohol. So you can do it. You're worth it. And, you know, I'm proud of you, because that could have just been my life. And it was for a long, long, long time. And, I guess that little girl now is getting seen and heard and validated in a positive way, instead of searching for validation in all the wrong places with all the wrong things. So, yeah, I'd tell her to, you know, I forgive you for not doing it earlier. But, yeah, life is like, I've got a second chance. And,
So great. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. It's just been really inspiring, and I'm honored to hear it.
Oh, thanks so much, Annie. It was a real big, as I've said to my colleagues at work, I said, oh, the mother of sobriety is interviewing me tomorrow. Because you are. I mean, the work that you're doing and the highlighting a different way of looking at alcohol, instead of that, you know, don't do it because of, you know, like those rigid steps. It's actually finding the science on, you know, what alcohol works until it doesn't. And, you know, so really, you're helping millions of people. So thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're ready to see how This Naked Mind can help you on your personal health and wellness journey and want to learn more, go to thisnakedmindpodcast.com to learn what your next best step is. Again, that's thisnakedmindpodcast.com. We have all of our free resources, programs, social links, and more available for you there. Plus, if you have your own naked life story to share, you can submit it there as well. Until next week, stay curious.